Hey everyone, my name's Forrest, and I like playing video games. And the hardest part about enjoying playing video games is as you collect them and as you build this big catalog and you've played so many, you get to the point where you start saying to yourself, uh, I got a platinum on this game, but I don't even remember doing that. And I don't want to have that experience as it's happened to me a couple times. And so I wanted to start a little personal way of discussing the video games I beat and what I enjoyed about them and what I thought about them. And, if you're here to listen and watch the video as well, just bring you along for the ride. So the most recent game that I beat was PlayStation Classic Metal Gear Solid. And to start, one of my favorite things about collecting physical games is just the experience of getting to hold it, right? 25 years ago, you purchased this at your local game store, and you're getting to enjoy everything that I see now on the back of this case. But you also get to pop open this beautiful, dual hinged jewel case. I love these. And not only that, but get to enjoy something I think a lot of modern games miss. But all the little extras, the extras of experiencing what's in the manual itself. And this manual is truly competitive. What I mean by that is among the best. There's a fantastic prologue in here which tells you all about the games prior. It goes through controls and how to work the game. There's even a funny, spoiler in here. I wonder if I can find it for you. I don't know if you can see that, but the torture event. The picture in here obviously spoils what's going to happen to Snake at some point in the game. Um, and you get equipment, guns. What are these? What do they do? Character bios. There's even some secrets in the manual itself that you'll use as part of experiencing and playing the game. And so when I think about all those things, it's truly impressive to me what they were able to accomplish so many years ago in the innovation space and in the experience of making a truly interactive game. And so that's what I really want to talk about. And the place to start any Metal Gear Solid game, I feel like, is with your personal history with it. So I'm definitely a Kojima fanboy, I'd say in a lot of ways, but I'd never experienced the full Metal Gear Solid game #1 before. I had played it before to Gray Fox when you're going after and you meet up with Otacon. And one time before, I had just explored the first few areas. But I really thought to myself, I've had this in my catalog for some time. I really want to invest the time to play it. And it is, relatively a short game compared to modern standards. So I should put the time in to get that done. But growing up, Metal Gear Solid 2, I played a number of times. Metal Gear Solid 3 was one of my favorite games on PlayStation 2. And I probably played that between it and the remaster 10 times through. I love that experience. I know all the secrets, and it's a special game that really means a lot to me. And Metal Gear Solid 4 is like Lord of the Rings, right? You have to watch it once every couple years and experience it. And MGS4 is a lot like watching a movie. But all said, it's one that I hold near and dear to my heart and I enjoy a lot. And I think that time and time again, Hideo Kojima proves that he just is one of the most creative minds working in this industry. He's so strange sometimes in his writing. Some of the concepts he come up with just break the barrier, I think, in a lot of ways. And I'll stop there. I'm not going to fanboy too hard about Kojima. And so let's go back, 25 years, and we're talking about Metal Gear Solid coming out on PlayStation. And the landscape of games at the time, at least in my mind, you've just come off of the tail end of a fantastic generation of home consoles that kind of bridge this gap between going to the arcade and being at home and enjoying these gaming experiences. So when it goes into the PlayStation 1 and N64 era, I think what you get a lot of is two things happening, right? A lot of video games based on this old arcade style of play, and then experimental and weird stuff sometimes. And Metal Gear Solid is one of those experimental games. It takes a lot of focus on driving a story and narrative, about bringing you along into this adventure and having you experience it in a way that I don't think a lot of games at the time had really capitalized on and really done just yet. And in this one, if you're familiar with any other Metal Gear Solid story, is going to feel right at home. So I won't talk too much on that. The one thing I did want to share is the medium in which they kind of show off that story. You get these fantastic cutscenes, uh, as you see in all MGS titles. But I really enjoyed one thing about them, and it's that the technology was limited at the time to where they'd have the 3D models there, or you'd be watching a codec, dialogue piece play out. But the characters themselves in these 3D shots would just be their models, and they would just kind of like shake and move their head a little bit to indicate that they're talking, because they didn't have the animations yet to really show a mouth moving, etc. But what was exciting about that for me was, one, I thought it was very creative, but two, it reminded me of being a kid and like playing with two action figures, and they're talking it out and I'm just moving them back and forth to make that clear in my imagination. It's fun to think what the team was able to do and accomplish with such limitations, and it's very exciting. So having the opportunity to watch those and witness them was really great. It was a fun and enjoyable experience throughout that ride. And furthermore, on MGS, all of those stories are kind of strange and weird. And I really like what they did with some of the twists and turns you'll find in this game. Though, if you're like me and you haven't played it before, but you've enjoyed the sequels plenty, will not be as twist heavy as they probably were for somebody newly experiencing this title way back in the day. So from a story lens, very fun and fresh, even 22 decades later. Talking about controls, gameplay, the gameplay I found to be interesting. When I think Metal Gear Solid, I think sneaking around. You're basically moving from area to area, going towards your objective, collecting items, sneaking past the guard, or maybe knocking them out sometimes, triggering an alert and then running away and trying to hide yourself. There is a lot of that in Metal Gear Solid, but one thing I found interesting was a big piece of this game is taken up in boss battles. There's got to be, across the span of an 8 to 9 hour experience, maybe 10, 15-ish boss battles, which as a result take up a lot of time of gameplay. And so the stealth to action was a lot more mixed than I was expecting for the entire run of the game. And I found that interesting. The boss battles themselves are unique, they're creative, and each one has its kind of like own twists on how you need to overcome it to win. And so I really enjoyed those aspects, and also enjoyed seeing how I could kind of cheese it at the same time. So I fought Sniper Wolf the second time, and one of the things that I really enjoyed was, if you have some Stinger missiles, the heat-seeking missiles, you can actually target her and you can shoot them and hit Sniper Wolf, as opposed to trying to sniper or use thermal goggles. You can see her better. It's just funny to think of all the different ways you can combine the equipment and weapons you have in order to overcome these bosses, because I did see that a lot of times. I could go back and replay a boss and then have a totally different experience on how I overcome it. And so that was really exciting. But I was hoping for a little more stealth across my experience, I'll be honest. The stealth parts are really fun because the team thought of a lot of very interesting ways for the guards to really show their intelligence and be interactive. Towards the early part of the game, you'll be outside and there's snow on the ground. And so when Snake runs by and hides from a guard, the guard might notice his footprints and say, "Oh, who left these footprints in the snow?" and come investigate. You'll also run into a bunch of traps, and sometimes go into a room and there's infrared lasers, which you could have spotted, but you weren't paying close enough attention. And then an alarm goes off and the guards know where you are. So these little aspects make sneaking around a process where you still want to be patient, you want to pay attention to what's around the corner, and those things will help you really get by unscathed. And I really enjoy that kind of gameplay loop and experience, and so I would have wanted a bit more of that. However, the boss battles, as I was mentioning before, are creative, fun, and energetic, and exciting to be a part of. Sound in Metal Gear Solid. When you are sneaking around, the music is so incredibly fun. You really feel like you're on a sneaking mission. You feel like you're part of the stealth action thriller experience. And when you're in the cutscenes or you get caught or something, you get these phenomenal thematic pieces that play throughout and really make those experiences enjoyable as well. I think that the orchestra soundtrack, excuse me, I would say, really holds up to this day, and it's fun to listen to even outside of playing the game. And not only that, but for a game that is 20 plus years old, running it on my PlayStation 3, the sound still sounded incredible and fun to listen to. And what I mean by that is in a quality sense, it was really exciting. So not much there. I would say that it is really good. It's almost, because I've played so many of the games, just there in the background. But when I really stop and I'm paying attention, I was thinking, ooh, this is fire. I'm really enjoying this. So again, sound, I really like those aspects of it. In the graphics world, I don't know, going back however long, I don't know much about the landscape of whether these graphics were innovative or not for the time. One thing I can speak to, though, is the PS1 and PS2. One thing I really enjoyed about the experiences of playing games on these consoles then and now is every game really has an art style and a theme and really shows its visuals in a creative way. And Metal Gear Solid is no different. You are going to get 3D polygons, which are pretty low res, but the environments are pretty well detailed, I would say. And a big part of that is, I think, using the top-down view was a big advantage for the team to kind of show what they wanted to do with the environment and make sure that you can see the little details. A good example being the infrared, right? It's really just like little red dots on the walls of a room, but it's still there and it's present and you can pick up on it if you're paying attention. And I kind of speak to that because if you look at the first person lens, because you can do first person as well when you stop and look around, sometimes you'll notice the draw distance is very, very short, or other times the textures just look kind of wonky and strange in first person. So I think the team really used their creativity to really create an environment where they can show off what the PlayStation is capable of on limited hardware and do it in an effective way that still to this day looks great on my like 55-inch TV. So overall, very cool. I really enjoy going back and looking at these old graphics. I think PS1 graphics especially have come to the forefront and become a more exciting visual medium to kind of see. And again, that applies to me as well. When I think about the game from a replayability sense, would I go back and replay this game? That's a more difficult one to answer. I think a big part of it is, the game is short, but equally so, there have been so many Metal Gear Solid games, and each one of them has innovated on what the one did prior, that I could see myself picking this up again in another handful of years and just giving it a run. But if I could choose a Metal Gear Solid game to play, it might be one of the sequels, just purely based on the idea that over time these games have gotten better and better and better, and Kojima and team have never stopped to just copy paste. They've always been innovative in updating everything about these games, their stories, the experience, the gameplay, the graphics, the sound. And so would I go back and replay this? Not too sure. I would like to run around with Snake with his bandana on, which is the bonus item you get for your first time completion, if I remember that correctly. But otherwise, a big part of this is just to speak to my personal experience with the game, my personal opinion. To think about this subjectively, the franchise as a whole means a lot to me. It's one I grew up with. It's one that I spent late nights with best friends or hanging out trying to figure out the secrets or some of the funny things you can do in these games. And so it always brings me a lot of great memories when I can come back and I can enjoy those, and I can see kind of where it started and what Kojima was up to. In a light sense, I would say this is kind of the starting point for what we know of modern Metal Gear Solid, not including the prior titles before this one. And objectively, Metal Gear Solid ends up in the top 10 of many best PlayStation 1 games of all time lists, and I can totally understand why. I'm with those people when they say that, because when I think about all the games I've played for PS1 and the experiences I've had, while a lot of those are incredible, yes, I will say, this was just something else. I feel like it was really ahead of its time. It's a smart game. It's one that still feels modern and interesting and fresh to enjoy, even if you're picking it up for the first time in 2023. So that's a little bit about my experiences. I'm sure there are things out there that, you know, you think about it. I'd love to hear those things. I'm always, I just played it, so it's fun to kind of hear what other folks thought about when they went through and they enjoyed it themselves. So feel free to let me know. And otherwise, I appreciate you listening and hanging in here. Again, my name's Forrest. Just documenting this little diary journey for myself, but I'm excited to have you along for that ride. Okay, well, until the next game, I hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful week, month. I don't know how long it'll be. But until then, take care and look forward to seeing you next time.